Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
What is happening, Knight fans? Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. My name is Jeff Sharon, along with Eric Lopez. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing good. I am now in transition mode. I've gotten over the depression that college football is done, but excited for what's ahead.
We still have our pro football, you know.
Yeah, that's true. But the Dolphins are out. So
now I'm totally locked into pro football, and I'll be watching that. But we got a lot of stuff going on at UCF too. Spring sports are underway. Obviously, basketball. We got a lot to talk about in this episode of the podcast. We've got men's and women's basketball now getting into the thick of conference play here in January. We also have tennis underway. And we'll also kind of put a wrap on the college football season as well. Riff a little bit about the national championship game and some thoughts from a UCF perspective on that. And a little bit of extra stuff going on around here in the podcast world here for the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. So lots of stuff to get to. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, UCF_Banneret. You can follow me at Jeff_Sharon and Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook. Subscribe to us at blackandgoldbanneret.com and also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, and SoundCloud. All right, let's get started with talking about men's basketball. Goodness me. This is a big week for UCF men's basketball because they are in a bit of a slide these last two games. Last show we were on, we were talking about how we recorded actually right after that East Carolina game, which was a bad game. Both teams shot 26% from the field, and we thought, okay, well, they'll be able to snap out of this at some point, and they might be in good shape heading into the UConn game. Well, UConn, who is down amongst the bottom of the American, UConn, we go up to Hartford to play them up there, and UConn just lays the wood to us, 64-49. The game was not that close. On last Sunday night. Taco Fall, his second consecutive scoreless game. That's a problem. He was 0 for 1 from the field. 4 turnovers. Did have 4 blocks in the game, only 2 fouls, so it wasn't a foul trouble thing. B.J. Taylor led the team with 18 points, but only 1 assist. The Knights compiled a grand total of 8 assists and shot 17 of 51 from the field. Meanwhile, Connecticut was led by 17 points from Rodney Purvis on 7 of 13 from the field. He also hit 3 threes, picked up 4 boards as UConn shot 47% from the field. And they were up by quite a bit. I think they were up at 1.60-36 by 24 points. UCF kind of rallied a little bit at the end to cut it down to a 15-point deficit at the end of the game. But the Knights fall to 12-4 overall, 3-1 in the American, and that's, like we said, 2 straight games, Eric. The East Carolina game before it, Taco went scoreless. The Knights only scored 48 points and won. This one, they score 49 points and lose. What has happened the last 2 nights?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, what do we talk about before this season? We had Michael Donnell on, and the biggest concern was lack of depth, the reduced of scholarship players. When you have no depth, it means pretty much you're dependent on the guys you're playing to produce. And what we've seen now for 2 games, if Matt Williams doesn't play well and Taco Fall doesn't play well, you're done pretty much. And if that's the thing, you need these guys to be good every night to have a shot. I think we have gotten spoiled with the start of the season and thought that, well, maybe they're better than we thought. Well, part of the reason why they got off to the great start is because Matt Williams was playing at a very high level. Taco Fall has been playing at a very high level. But they are still young kids, and the old, what's the old? I know you love this cliche, the regression to the means.
Yep.
I think we've seen.
That's not a cliche. That's a mathematical principle.
Well said. No, that's true. Touche on that. So I think we've seen a little bit of that from the guys, and that's a result why they've struggled offensively. Now, it's not time to panic. It's not time to overreact. It's not. But what it is we're seeing, this was the concerns we had before the season. This was the concern I even had while they were playing well. And I said, let's see how things go in the conference. Because what we're seeing, and we'll start with Taco, teams are making adjustments. Teams have tape on these guys now. So teams are making adjustments. And I don't think it's an accident that East Carolina, who had a big that did a great job on Taco, and then UConn, even though they've had their issues, they have Brima there, and they got their bigs there too. They know how to defend bigs. And they try to be more physical, and they're making adjustments. And I think that's why Taco has struggled. Matt Williams, the shot hasn't been going as well. And so it's a combination of things. Those guys, along with B.J. Taylor and A.J. Davis, have to play well, because if they don't, there are no other options, Jeff. It's not like other schools or in a normal year where you can maybe call the number of the seventh man on the bench or something like to pick up the slack. There is no other seventh man on this team, right, or eighth guy.
Yeah, when you look at, if you take away B.J. Taylor's shot attempts, the Knights as a team shot 10 of 34. Matt Williams himself was 3 of 9 from beyond the arc, 3 of 11 overall. A.J. Davis was 1 of 7. Tank Effiani also put up a donut. He had no points on 0 of 3 shooting. And Nick Banneret had 8 points off the bench, but you're right, Eric. I mean, it seems like they are making the adjustments. They're putting the pressure on the right places on us right now. But Taco, only 1 shot attempt. That tells me that he's kind of getting pushed out of his spots a little bit. And the footwork that we saw, that he was getting good position early in the season. Now teams are trying to sort of figure out the code, and now he has to make the adjustment. And he hasn't quite made the adjustment yet. I think he will. And I think we're going to have to, over the course of this next week, have a relatively light week leading up to the Houston game coming up next. But those are the adjustments that I want to see. I think that this sort of 6 days off prior to the Knights' next game against Houston, and a big game against Houston, because their record is exactly identical to us, 12-4 overall, 3-1 in the conference, and they're also coming off their first conference loss. This is going to be a big game for UCF. This is the biggest early conference game, I think, yet. It's going to be on CBS Sports Network. Tip-off set for 4 p.m. on Saturday, January the 14th. How much of a problem do you think Houston poses for us right now?
Well, it's funny because I watched Houston's last game against Cincinnati. They depend on the 3 ball. They've been shooting the 3 great all season. They did not against Cincinnati. That's kind of what failed them. I think they shot in the teens. Couldn't make a basket against Cincinnati. So that's going to be the challenge. Houston's got some quick guards, and they're going to attack UCF. Now, UCF's done a great job, again, guarding the perimeter. What's interesting is Houston's had the opposite problem that UCF's had, and that is Houston's issue has been more on the defensive side. Until the Cincinnati game, they actually defended well against Cincinnati. They just couldn't take advantage of it. Calvin Sampson's done a phenomenal job there turning around that Houston program, which really was at the bottom when he arrived there, a couple seasons ago. So they're going to go up tempo, and it's going to be a unique challenge. I agree with you. It's a big game because you look at the American Conference, and at the time, depending on when people are listening to this, the biggest game in the American Conference in basketball is coming up Thursday night. Cincinnati and SMU are playing.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 best teams right in the league. RPI wise, talent wise. To me, Jeffrey, I think those 2 teams are going to be in the NCAA tournament regardless of what happens moving forward, unless they have an epic collapse or some forth. So they're going to have at least, the conference is looking at least 2 bids. The question is going to be for the American Conference, can they get a 3rd and or a 4th team? Can someone play themselves into that? And I think this matchup with UCF and Houston right now are 2 of those contenders. Houston's RPI is more in the 70s. That's why the Cincinnati loss hurt them. UCF, obviously, his RPI took a bit of a hit against UConn, although this is why there are flaws to the RPI. And let me just say this. As confident as I was about UCF's chances against Temple before the game, I had zero confidence going into UConn. And I know UConn's had their issues. They've had injury issues, and their record's not good right now, and they're struggling, and their RPI is not very good. But you still got to go to UConn. You still got to face that program. And that's, to me, I was worried about that game because you knew UConn
was a trap, don't you think? I mean, it felt like UConn, they've got off to such a slow start to the season. It's a talented team. They're at home Sunday on TV. That just felt like they were going to be ready for us.
Absolutely, and they were. In fact, Coach Ali acknowledged that was probably the best 40 minutes they played all season. And remember, they played a tough schedule too pre-season, so the pre-conference. So I think we can't overreact to that. If we were doing this podcast in October and we said, well, UCF's going to lose at UConn by 15, I think we would have said, yeah, that sounds about right. So let's not overreact. I know that UConn's had their issues and they've struggled, but that's not an easy place to play. I've been up there. It's not an easy place to get to Hartford. And UConn still has a lot of pride. They have a tremendous program. And don't be surprised if UConn makes a run here towards the end of the year and what they have done in the last handful of the 3 years here in the American Conference, make a run at the conference tournament. That's where I think that's where UConn's going to be really dangerous, I have a feeling. But, for UCF, I think you just learn from that. And, you just got to build on this big game with the Houston game. Because I agree with you. It's a big game. You win this game, I think you kind of get off, you kind of put that bad taste out of your mouth and move forward, make progress. If you lose, now you've lost a couple games. And, the big question is, can they find some answers offensively? Also, I think the week off helps. Remember, B.J. Taylor just got back. Yeah. Okay?
He still looked like he's still trying to adjust to it too, even though he was only out for a couple games. I felt like he was just trying to do way too much these last 2 games, don't you?
Absolutely, I agree 100% with that. And he's missed, and then the players got to get reacquainted with him. So I think that's why I think that's part of the reason why the offense hasn't been as sync as well. So now they got a week of practice and they get to refamiliarize with each other. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. BJ just came back in that East Carolina game, and some people were surprised he came back in the East Carolina game. So you're trying to get these pieces to work together. And so I think that's a part of it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can come up with on Saturday against Houston. I will be there. I'm looking forward to it. I always love the UCF-Houston rivalry in all sports because I think the programs are similar. And I think it's a big game for both of them because I think both of them feel like, okay, Cincinnati and SMU are the top 2 teams in the league probably. But the question becomes, who is the third best team? Is it Houston? Is it Memphis with Tubby Smith? Is it Houston? Is it UCF? Is it whoever? Temple. But Temple's off to a slow start. UCF beat Temple. That's the big question is who's going to be the third and the fourth best teams in the American Conference, and can that team put themselves in position to either make the NCAAs or make postseason?
Now, I should correct myself because actually Houston, we're recording this on Wednesday night, January the 11th. Houston actually won earlier today. So they're now 13-4 and 4-1 in the league. They beat East Carolina 74-58. That game was in Greenville. So that's a big win for Houston. Key guy to watch out for them is Rob Gray Jr., who's averaging 20.5 points per game. He's shooting 49% from the field, so he's having a very good season.
Tremendous talent, yeah. Tremendous talent. Will be a contender for Player of the Year, all conference. Again, that's going to be interesting how UCF guards the perimeter and guards those wings against Houston. And how much of a factor will Taco Fall be in this game? Normally Taco's been tremendous from the standpoint of size. He dominates inside, and teams can't go inside of him. Well, Houston's more than content to play in the outside. So it's going to be who can put the other team's will in there. Houston's probably going to want to speed up the game, make this a open court. They're going to try and get Taco out of the game. And I think UCF's going to try and kind of use the size and play defense and maybe slow the ball down. I don't think UCF wants to get into a track meet with Houston. So I'm very intrigued by this matchup. So I'm looking forward to it. By the way, depending on when you're listening to this, the SMU-Cincinnati game's an ESPN game. And I said ESPN. I didn't say the Deuce. I didn't say ESPN. ESPN. So 9 Eastern, Thursday night. Make a note of that. I think they're the two best teams, Jeff, in the American Conference, and those are probably, for UCF standpoint and Houston, everybody else, that's the two teams that I think people are going to be chasing. But I think after that, I think it's kind of open. I don't have – it's early, clearly, but I don't have a sense of who is the third or fourth best team. It's a very weird year in the American from that standpoint, partly because of UConn's struggles. I think we just assumed UConn would have been up there. They're not at this point. So that's fascinating to me. So big game. And then, we're focusing on that. The other key is you don't want to have a letdown regardless of the Houston game. The following game, you're hosting a USF team that's already fired Orlando Antigua. Okay. And USF, Jeff, I could make the argument is probably right now the worst team in the league. And to me, that's going to play just as big of a role on the season. Because if you drop a game to USF or two, that's almost like losing, you're losing ground at that point.
Right.
So very important couple home games here for UCF. I think the thing I'm looking forward to seeing, the school is back in session. I want to see the students out there. UCF starting their tailgating for basketball, so I'm curious with the atmosphere. I think needs to be big, and you and I have been there when that place is rocking. It could be a tough place to play, and I think that's got to be pivotal. I think the fans have to kind of help this team out too. Sometimes that could help. We watched it earlier this week for people that watched Florida State play Duke in basketball. That was the first sellout at the Tucker Center in like 4 years. They had over 11,000 in it, and you could tell it was a different place than it normally is. And I think UCF has that ability, and they can make the difference in games like Saturday against Houston.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hope that the tailgating thing actually does work out because, first of all, I think it's interesting, and second of all, I do think that it's the right thing to do if you're trying to draw some more people over to basketball.
Yeah,
give a little bit of a teaser to get a few more people to just come out, especially to these afternoon games that happen on the weekends.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about it since it came out. And clearly, other basketball schools have done similar things. And Duke did this with Shesheskyville and stuff like that. I've always wondered about that. I've already talked about tailgating in football. Basketball is obviously indoors, so it's a little different. But why not try a little bit of a tailgating activity and stuff like that? It is very interesting to me. On the impact of that.
Yeah. Now they got Danny White made the announcement. What they're going to have is I'm looking at there are 4 conference games. You got to register, but there are 4 conference games that they're looking at. January 14th, obviously the Houston game, 4 p.m. tip. The Memphis game, February 4th. The following week, Saturday, they're all weekend games. Saturday, February 11th versus UConn. That's a 6 p.m. tip, and then Sunday, February 26th against Cincinnati. So all 4 of those games are big conference games. The tailgating opens up 4 hours before tip. That should be a fun little thing where you can go to Memory Mall. One other quick thing I wanted to mention, too, about Taco Falls. Sorry to go back to this, but I would like to see him get involved because when we have when we have a situation where you're playing a team that does kind of want to kind of run and gun and relies on the outside shot, he's going to get the chance to catch a lot of defense, to get himself a lot of defensive boards. And that's something that UCF, to their credit, they've been, up until the UConn game, they were number 1 in the country in rebounding. And it's been the defensive boards that have been helping out UCF the most. Then we got out-rebounded by UConn, so what happened, right? So I think that's going to be a key to the game. But I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the atmosphere. It should be a fun Saturday coming up. Because and just an interesting experiment too with the tailgating as well, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I'm actually, I can tell you, I'm hosting the Sports Talk Florida Insider Show on Saturday from Universal Nissan from 11 to 1, and then from there, I'm going straight to campus, and I want to see what's it like outside.
Yeah,
I want to see how what the vibe is, how many people are there, and I think it's a good look. I applaud making opportunities, some ideas, and taking chances and making ideas. I'm all for it. So whether it works or not, I have no idea, but I think you got to applaud the effort, don't you, Jeff? They're trying some different things. So to me, it's on the fans, right? At some point you got to look in the mirror and say, well, what else do you want type of deal.
Well, I think this is really putting the ball in the court of the students. In particular.
Yes.
I think that's
Absolutely.
what this really is. Hey, guys, we got a basketball game coming up. I know how much you love, football tailgating. And, hey, this ain't football, but this is tailgating. Let's have some fun. Let's get you into the building for these big weekend dates and see what happens.
And make a fun day out of it. And, look, Saturday, Sunday, kind of pick up where football left off. But the main thing is tailgate, but then also come to the arena. Don't just, tailgate. Sometimes we've had people that are guilty of that. So, no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. I'm excited to see this team and see what they look like on Saturday. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with. And you're right. Houston and UCF, to me, have always had some great memorable games. I'll never forget. I think it was 2007. It was Michael O'Donnell hitting that three-pointer at the old, what now is the UCF venue, against Houston in a marquee game that was for second place, because that was back when John Calipari and Memphis were running roughshod in Conference USA. And, Kirk Sparrow and UCF and Houston. Tom Penders was the Houston coach, and it was a battle for second place. And it was one of the best games I've ever seen in college basketball in person. Michael O'Donnell and UCF beating Houston in overtime to pretty much get the number 2 spot in the Conference USA, which was a big deal because, everybody knew Calipari and Memphis was going to win the conference. So second place felt like your own title, if you will.
Right.
So I've always had enjoyable moments. There have been not so good moments, but in memorable games I never forget. Right around that same time frame, Houston UCF played a game where UCF had a 18, 20-point lead in Houston, and Houston came all the way back. So there's been some memorable games from these two teams when these programs, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this chapter brings in a very important game. So I think both teams feel that they can compete, and I think they got some interesting aspirations with two coaches that know what they're doing, Calvin Sampson and Johnny Dawkins. A great head-to-head matchup there. I'm looking forward to seeing how the chess match works with those two. So,
and guys have had great success at other schools that have come. Again, we talked about coaching in the American. Here's a good matchup.
It is. It really is. So I'm excited. It's good to have the guys back home here for a couple games and get into the crust of this conference. And I think another guy that's got A.J. Davis, got to get him going here,
yeah.
Jeff, too. He's been the one guy since he came back from the injury. He hasn't been at the level that he was a year ago for whatever the reason. They need to get more out of him to take some of the load off of Matt Williams, take some of the load off B.J. Taylor, and help that offense, because this offense, it's not brain surgery. There's only certain guys the offense is going to come from, and AJ has to be one of them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to him getting off. And I think that would be really helpful for him to get off in this game, and not just outside, but inside as well. I want to see him take it to the hole a little bit more. So these next two games, pivotal. January 14th, Saturday, 4 p.m. against Houston, and followed up 2 days later, USF coming to town. That game's the Houston game's on CBS Sports Network. The USF game's Tuesday, January 17th at 7 p.m. That game is on ESPN News. So two huge games for UCF men's basketball coming up. All right. One other thing I wanted to mention. If you're looking to get a little scouting report on the Houston Cougars before our game on Saturday, I was fortunate enough to be asked on as a guest for the Scott and Holman podcast, PAWDCAST. That's done by Sam Scott and Dustin Holman, who are kind of like us, only they're University of Houston guys. And they had me on as a guest for episode 225 of their show. 225 episodes. Well done, guys. And
wow!
I'll have
really?
I'll have a link to that show in the description of this one. So give that one a listen, so that fans of both squads are well informed coming into our respective game this Saturday. So and thanks again to those guys again, to Sam and Dustin for having me on. Really appreciate it. I'm hoping that we'll have one of them or maybe both of them on for the return trip when UCF goes out to Houston later on this season. Switching gears, let's talk a little UCF women's basketball. As Eric, you had said after in the show we did after the UConn game is that don't let UConn beat you twice. And following that UConn game that we lost 84-48, which, by the way, judging by that score against what UConn did against USF, I think we did pretty good against UConn in general. The Knights had lost 2 in a row, 63-57 to Cincinnati at Cincinnati, and then by 3 at home against Memphis. So a couple close games that the Knights dropped. And so that's a 4-game skid right there heading into the new year if you add in that UC Davis game right before the conference opener against UConn. And things were kind of a little worried that things were coming off the wheels. Well, tonight, the Knights stopped the bleeding. They go into Houston and get the win, 62-48. Outscored the Cougs 22-9 in the third quarter. That was the difference. Zy Lewis with 17. 3 players with 11, including KK Wright, Jocelyn Massey, and Aaliyah Gregory. Down the stretch, as we were watching this game, Eric, we're recording this again on Wednesday, January 11th, as this game was finishing up. Jocelyn Massey was tremendous in the second half. 11 points, 10 rebounds for the game, and that was fun to watch. As UCF shoots 42% from the field and holds Houston to just 31%. For the Cougs, Angela Harris led them with 11. They had Jasmine Harris with 10 and 11 boards. But it's a big win for UCF women's basketball, kind of coming back off of that slide, and they get that critical conference win.
Yeah, good to end the schneid, if you will, go on the road. It's a very, they got a lengthy road trip coming up here, and you mentioned the loss at Cincinnati a week ago. That they dug themselves a hole, tried to come back too late. They mentioned Saturday, the home game against Memphis. That came down to the last minute. There was opportunities there. It didn't happen, but Coach Abe gets her first win in the American Conference. And again, defensively, I think this team, and you were there, Coach Calhoun, when he said the comment, this team comes at you and they attack you. And I think defensively, this team, that's how they're going to win games. They're going to play defense as the offense comes around. It was good to see the offense come around. Zy Lewis, leading scorer. I think that's the recipe for the offensive side. But, being physical inside, going in the boards, getting the work done, and pulling away was huge for them. Coach Abe using a lot of different bodies, and it paid off. So good for them. And, I've always felt that trying to get that first conference win sometimes can be the hardest. And then once you get it, maybe you relax a little bit and can play basketball moving forward. So now that they got that off the schneid, big win for them here as they're going to be on the road here for a little bit until January 21st.
Yeah, UCF jumps up to 11-6 overall, 1-3 in the league. Now, they're actually, you look at the standings, it's still early. They're actually second to last in the conference. But they go by conference record, and you got, 4 teams at 1-2, Tulane's at 2-2, 2 teams at 2-1, including USF and Cincinnati, and then Temple and UConn are 3-0 in the league. But UConn is head and shoulders above everybody else. Everyone kind of knows that. It's a race for second place, as everybody knows. But Zy Lewis was big. she is the only one who really gets to shoot threes because she's so good at it. She was 2 of 6 from the arc in this game, 7 of 12 overall. But, Coach Abe said, she doesn't like the three-point shot. And, not that she doesn't like it. It's just that she doesn't want to rely on it as much as other teams. She wants to pound the ball down low. I think that certainly happened with Jocelyn Massey. Also, Fifi Endure got into the act a little bit with 8 points in 24 minutes. Picked up 4 fouls in the game, so that kind of dropped down her ability to do much offensively. Tolu Omakore was also out there for UCF getting the job done on the boards as well. Tolu didn't finish with any baskets, but 3 rebounds. But Jocelyn Massey, she was key in the third quarter spurt for UCF that put the game effectively out of reach. So if you look at the standings right now for UCF, like I said, they got some work to do, but it's still early because everyone's only 3 or 4 games into the slate in conference. And here's the slate coming up. This is the first of 2 road games this week. The Knights come back home, and then a week from the Houston game, January 18th, Wednesday, they go to East Carolina for a game against the Pirates. East Carolina is dead last in the league at 1-3, 10-7 overall. So it's all kind of a little mixed up in terms of who's who, and there's going to be certainly some shaking up in the conference schedule over the next week. But then after that, you're home January 21st for Tulsa. That's a Saturday. And then Tuesday, January 24th for Cincinnati. Second time you're going to be playing them, and that's going to be a big game because obviously we mentioned how good Cincinnati is. They're 2-1 in the league, 11-5 overall coming in. So good chance for the Knights to get off the schneid. tonight, and they do against Houston, and they do so on the interior. Anything that concerns you about this game, Eric?
I don't know about concern. I mean, it is this team. Remember, I mean, it's the first year under Coach Abe, and I think you're going to have some ups and downs, especially on the offensive end. But I was just pleased to see Zy Lewis play well. I think for them to win games, she's got to play well. She's capable of it. I think sometimes Zy just got to be confident in her abilities. Don't be so defensive. Sometimes you get players where they're too unselfish. You know what I mean? I think she's capable of being aggressive and being a 20-point scorer.
I think sometimes the players are a little bit tentative because they don't want to mess up in front of the new coach. They're still learning the system,
right?
And you can still kind of feel like they're whenever they run something, they're kind of like, oh, is this the right thing? Do I have to?
Right.
Do I have to be on the floor to start this? Where do I go? Oh, okay, yeah, I remember. And so they're still kind of learning this system. So for them to be at this position, actually, I think is pretty good overall. And I think Coach Abe deserves a lot of credit for the patience that she's had with the players too.
And that's the thing; they're learning each other. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. You mentioned at East Carolina, and see what they do there. Tough place in Greenville. I know ECU's had their issues, but I watched East Carolina actually. I saw them over the weekend. They were at home against against SMU. That came down to the last possession of the game. So they could have easily won that game. They did not. It came up short, but that was a tight game. So, and I think that's the key, Jeff. Execution down the stretch. How will UCF handle that? They had that tight loss to Memphis. 2 or 3 of these games are going to come down to the last possession or two, and how you execute and have the confidence to pull it out will be keys for them. And could be the difference between, finishing 5th or 6th in the conference or finishing 9th in the conference. I think that's that tight.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's a little bit concerning to me, though, is if you look at the score by periods, over throughout the season, the Knights start off, very tight on defense. They've only given up 197 points in the first quarter. But in each quarter, as you get later, they've given up more points. 257 given up in the fourth quarter this season. They've scored 284 in the final period. But that kind of gets me a little bit worried sometimes that maybe they're getting a little bit tired down the stretch. But this is quite a deep team, and so I think if they can continue to they're out rebounding their opponents by almost 10 boards a game, which is remarkable. I think if that continues, that's going to pay for itself in the long run. So again, coming up for UCF, they got a week off basically until they go back on the road to East Carolina next Wednesday, and hoping that they can finish out, get back into their winning ways in conference. All right, stick around. When we get back, we'll talk a little tennis. UCF Tennis is getting underway this weekend with a couple of debut matches at the USTA Tennis Center down by Lake Nona. And we'll put a wrap-up on the college football season with a quick look back at some UCF connections with the, again, that we didn't talk about last week, with the College Football National Championship, and a little bit of coaching news as well. Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret podcast is back after this.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fegley.
This is Trey Strelka with the UCF Nightline Podcast, the original, the #1 rated UCF sports podcast.
You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. On Twitter, it's UCF_Nightline, and at www.ucfnightlinepodcast.com.
Be sure to subscribe to us as well on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
And when you get sick of listening to these guys, make sure you look us up.
Don't forget, that's the UCF Nightline Podcast. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now, back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
And thanks again also to Andrew and Trace, who had me on as a guest this past Sunday for their year-end, for their football season end, video show, The Spectacular, Andrew called it. I was a guest on that along with the incomparable Eric Kohler. And it was a good time. We kind of wrapped up the football season, looked ahead to 2017, touched upon basketball a little bit. But make sure you check a look at that because I have a link up there on blackandgoldbanneret.com that you can check out. Eric, you got to come to the next one, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you're everywhere. Everybody, you're doing interviews with Houston people. You're doing YouTube specials here with Andrew. It's just tremendous.
Look, wow, man. What can I say?
Hey, man, I'm glad you are. I'm happy for you. It's great. Hey, no, I watched it. It was great. You did a great job. It was a great show. I mean, that's you're the go-to guy there. I don't know how many of those is he do Andrew and those Trace doing those
the live video shows? I think this was like the second or third one. I don't know. I'll have to ask him, but I think this was like the second or third one. I watched at least one before. It was great, I thought, and even better this time. It's just getting better. So it's a great job by those guys. And again, thanks.
Yeah, it was a recap. Yeah, it was a recap of the football season and the highlights and stuff, and looking ahead to the 2017 season. So. Certainly a good conversation, a good way to wrap up the football season.
Yeah, and a lot of interesting stuff that we were able to talk about too. That some of which you've heard from us before, and some new stuff as well. So that's something that's worth checking out. All right, you know what else is worth checking out, Eric Lopez? Yep. UCF Tennis this year. Oh yeah, we know all about John Roddick. By the way, you can check out Eric's first interview with him from a couple months back, right after, not long after John got hired at UCF to be the director of tennis. Well, tennis actually is underway. The UCF women's tennis team on Wednesday, January the 11th, defeated Flagler College 5-2 at the UCF Tennis Complex. That's the rec courts over by the rec center. Head coach Brian Kaneko said, "We knew Flagler was going to be a tough one considering we were down 1.5 points from the start, but the girls handled the pressure well, not only being the first match of the season but also being down. Can't be more proud of them for getting through today. We got another one on Friday." So women's tennis is getting underway, and their first two matches are going to be at the UCF on campus at the tennis complex. They finished off this Wednesday match, and they got Florida Tech on Friday. Sunday, January 15th, they start off at the USTA Tennis Center down by Lake Nona. Actually, just north of the 417 in the Lake Nona area. So it's not down by the hospitals, but it's just on the other side of 417 from there. And, of course, men's tennis is going to be starting up there as well. So, and they've got a match coming up against Texas Tech, Eric, and you were able to talk to the Texas Tech coach and get a little bit of context, I think, for what can be expected from UCF Tennis. So what do you think about this coming in? I mean, now, we've heard all the stuff about, the new facility, the new commitment with John Roddick to tennis, and how good UCF Tennis can be. But now that we're right on the eve of it, what's the overall read on UCF Tennis right now?
Well, I think that people, it's one of the top stories in college tennis is what John Roddick will do with UCF. Jeff, as you know, UCF Tennis hasn't been at the upper level in tennis over the last few years. And now you get John Roddick, who's one of the top coaches in the sport, led Oklahoma to 3 runner-ups, NCAA runner-up appearances for the championship at Oklahoma. Now he's at UCF. And you mentioned, I spoke to the Texas Tech head coach, Brett Macy. Texas Tech's a top 25 program. They are Big 12 champions. He had to deal with John Roddick. And as I asked him, and he explains here, he talks about what UCF's getting in John Roddick is one of the best in the industry.
John's a great guy. He's a great coach. Shoot, they made the finals the last 3 seasons at Oklahoma. Before John got to Oklahoma, the program was mostly a top 50 at best program. And then in his 7 years or so there, he reached the quarterfinals, I think, once. And then, again, he reached 3 finals. I mean, that's just, very consistent and very, he's able to get good players there. And not to mention he's a great coach and he works his guys hard and, he does an awesome job. And obviously the proof's in the pudding, otherwise you couldn't say anything other than that with making 3 finals. I can't say that enough. It'd be great to, I've been lucky enough to win a national title being an assistant coach when I was at USC. But to make 3 finals in a row is tough to do. To make a final in general is tough to do and win a national title. But, he's done an awesome job. And I think, with the USTA being right here now and having that center at his disposal and for the UCF players and what they're going to be able to do, it won't take long for John to get them going on the map and moving forward and being a top 25 program or even higher.
There you go, Coach Macy there, Jeff, and he talks about John Roddick and the impact and why he's such a great coach. Obviously, the ties with his brother, Andy Roddick, and the name factor. But, I mean, Jeff, this is a huge, huge story. I look at the spring, I think the big stories in UCF, obviously Greg Lovelady at baseball being the new head coach there, but this is as big as it gets with John Roddick. The comparison I made, imagine if like Urban Meyer left Ohio State to come to UCF for football. I mean, that's kind of what this is in college tennis. John Roddick is regarded as one of the best in this industry in college tennis, and the expectations are, and I'm sure that's what Danny White is coming in is, and you heard Macy allude to it. I think UCF's expectations, if not this year soon, is to make the NCAA tournament and be a factor in the sport.
I think that's certainly now. It's because it used to be, well, wouldn't it be nice if we got to the NCAA tournament? Now it's going to be an expectation, and I think it's going to take a couple of recruiting classes for that to happen. But the expectations are now up there for both coaches. Obviously, John is the director of tennis, overseeing both programs, and the men's head coach. Coach Kaneko is coaching is the head coach of the women's team, working one step underneath him. But the two of them have had, obviously, we know about the success that they both have had on their resumes. So I think that this is a prime time to get on board for UCF Tennis, because they're actually starting out. Look at the schedule starting out at the USTA complex, right? So the match against Texas Tech is 5 p.m. on Saturday, January 14th. Then they got New Mexico coming the next day. Then they've got Arizona the day after that. Sunday, January 22nd against Auburn at home. And then later on that same day, they've got Bethune-Cookman. But then after that, they go on the road to Florida State for their first road match of the season, Thursday, February 9th. So they're ramping this thing up real quick, and they're going to find out about that sort of competition level right away. We're going to see how much better right off the bat that the men's tennis team is under Coach Roddick before they actually get to it's. There's no actual. Here's the thing about tennis: there's no actual conference play. Now, we do have matches against teams that are in our conference. We have matches against Tulsa. USF is coming to town later on in the season. SMU is coming down. But that's it. It's mostly kind of like a non-conference schedule. So that enables Coach Roddick to have a lot of flexibility with regard to how he can schedule. You don't actually do anything with the American until you get to the conference championships, which, again, will be held in Lake Nona in late April. April the 20th is when that's going to get started down there. So we're hosting the conference.
Both men and women.
Both men and women, that's right, which is good because I'm glad they do that at the same facility. So women's, in the meantime, they got Iowa coming up as their first matchup at the Tennis Center on Sunday, January 15th. So look at that. We got a doubleheader on the 15th, 2 p.m. New Mexico for the men, noon Iowa for the women. And then they've got Bethune-Cookman Sunday, January 22nd, right after that. And they play a lot of teams kind of local. Stetson, Florida A&M, UNF, Florida Gulf Coast, FAU, Georgia Southern, kind of in this neck of the woods, if you will. And so that'll be that I think will be pretty helpful for the team as well going forward. So I'm interested to see how that goes. And you talked about the facility, too, and how that all is kind of shaping up, right?
It's huge. I talked to Coach Macy. And again, people keep in mind, Brett Macy was a Big 12 Coach of the Year. He was an assistant at USC, a national champion coach. Coach Steve Johnson, who's currently arguably the top American professional tennis player in the world right now. So he knows his tennis. And I interviewed him. And this interview will air, by the way, on Saturday on my Insiders show. You can listen to it at 11:30. We go into the detail what Texas Tech will bring to the table this year and what they'll do against UCF and stuff like that. But one of the questions I asked him was about the USTA Center and the impact of this to the sport. Because I know in talking to people, one of their goals is to host, you mentioned they're hosting the conference tournament championships, but they want to host the NCAA championships as well. And I asked him, hey, would the USTA Center here in Lake Nona be in favor of being the permanent home for the tennis championships, or do you like to rotate the championships? And he answers the question about what going back and forth on the answer, but then listen to what he had to say about the facility.
When I was playing and early on in coaching, that pretty much every year was at Georgia, and that was the home. And as much as an advantage it was for Georgia, it was just, it's like every time it's now back at Georgia, everybody gets really excited about it. In my mind, at least I do. It's just fun to go there, and just the atmosphere that they've done with Dan McGill and back in the day, it just kind of screams like college tennis. But, if we can set something like that at the USTA Center, and I'm hoping that's what they're trying to do, that would be awesome. And I think if we had a consistency where we knew where it was at every single year, then people would know what to expect, and, we can kind of move with that. But with the amount of money that everybody is, I think, putting into their facilities, these days, whether it's in tennis or any other sport, I think we're not doing that just to, we want to host a national title too, or, other schools when I say we. But again, if USTA built a 100-court facility and we have everything right there, it's going to be tough to compete against that when they put the bid out and, say, hey, we got 12 or great, courts here, then you can also practice before the matches and everything's right at your disposal. And they have the indoor courts as well. That's going to be tough.
And there you have it. Jeff. And you notice that, it's funny how he answered the question. He was back and forth. He talked about Georgia, of course, which has got the great tradition. But you notice how he snuck in all the things that USTA brings to the table. And at the end of the day, if they put the bid in, I don't think anybody would complain if the championships are held there and exposure. So that's why this is huge. I think the reason I bring that up is being big. If you're John Roddick, if you're UCF Tennis, men and women tennis, from a recruiting standpoint, to tell your kids that this is going to be where you play your home matches, Jeff, I think is a game changer.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, that I used to cover Georgia tennis because they were really good at the time that I was there in Athens. In fact, I was there when they were when they were hosting in 2007 at the Dan McGill Tennis Complex, and Georgia won the men's championship both years, 07 and 08 that I was there working there. They won in Athens on their home court in 07, then won out in Tulsa, actually. And at the Dan McGill Tennis Complex, if anyone's ever been there, that is an oasis of college tennis. It really is beautiful. It kind of has a very classic feel to it. The seating's really good. The courts are just absolutely gorgeous, but it's rather small. The USTA complex is going to be big. And I think that may be an opportunity there for, they keep billing it as the home of American tennis. What better way than to establish that than hold your college championships there? So that'll be a fun thing for UCF going forward. The commitment to UCF tennis, I think, is the thing I'm most excited about and seeing, because I think UCF can be nationally competitive in tennis in a real hurry. We got the right environment. We're in the right area. I think this is going to be a fun few years to see what John Roddick can do at UCF. And let's be honest. You mentioned I interviewed John Roddick a couple of months ago. It's on the site. It's on Black and Go Banneret. But I asked him about that facility, and he acknowledged it's one of the reasons why he is at UCF, because of that place and the potential that you could do here with that. It's a game changer. I really do. I think it's a game changer for this program. And I think Danny White, you talk about a home run hire. I think it's big, Jeff. And I will go on a limb and say, I think within the next 3 to 4 years, UCF will be a national title contender in college tennis. Because when I spoke to John Roddick, and at the time of this recording, I'm the only one that's interviewed him. Yeah. That's an exclusive, ladies and gentlemen, by the way. Black, right there, if you want to hear him. And I recommend people listen to that interview, even though it was from a couple months back. He talked about the team he's got, the transfers that he's already got in, Jeff. They're going to make an immediate impact on this year. He discussed that as well. He's a very confident guy, and you can tell in his when you talk to him that when you spend time, when you talk to him, you can't help but be sold on what he's selling, and that confidence rubs off. And I think he's going to bring the most out of these players, and players are going to want to play for him because they know who he is. And I just think, I think UCF tennis is in for an incredible future. And I credit to Danny White again. I cannot emphasize that, because to have that vision, Jeff, to get a John Roddick, knowing that you're going to be playing your home matches at the USTA Center, to hit a home run like that is just blows me away. I know Coach Macy, and when I spoke to him, and other people I've talked to in college tennis, it was a blockbuster move. It is no question the biggest story in college tennis in 2017. Tremendous. And, we're looking forward to having Coach Roddick and Coach Kaneko on our program. Hopefully soon in the next several weeks as we move through the spring as well. So yeah, I mean, a blockbuster move like we said, and this is something that we've been looking to make a splash on. I'd love to see UCF get do this in tennis, obviously, which I think has been a little bit underinvested in the last several years.
You covered that, and expand on that because you were there. You worked at UCF. You covered tennis. One of the few that did. You covered tennis.
Every match I would go out there and get video. Yeah, and we covered them at the they call it the UCF Tennis Complex, but basically it's the rec courts next to the Rec and Wellness Center. And you
broadcasted to some as a student, if I remember. I was told too, right? You did some broadcast stuff where you guys, the students, did some tennis.
It, but we didn't get the opportunity to do it. I didn't get the opportunity to do it. It would have been. Really
That's right. It was other people. I know UCF TV back in the day.
UCF
did some
TV
of that.
did it. I wasn't able to do it. I think Matt Dunaway actually did.
That's right. He did. He did. Yep.
But they are what they are. They're recreational courts that kind of have been, on occasion, fallen into disrepair and aren't exactly even. There are some spots where, if it rains, water tends to collect and just stay there. And it's hard to – there's a ceiling to how good you can be against teams that are playing in better facilities when you're playing there, right? So,
there's no question. There's no question about that. I mean, I've been to UCF tennis matches. I've been there, and let's be honest, you and I can play there. It's no different. Like that's
they would boot people off the tennis courts and like, hey, we have an NCAA tennis match coming up. You guys are going to have to go now. And,
correct.
And that that was that was really awkward. And that's I hate saying it. And I feel bad for the coaches who were there. Stephanie Nikitas and Bobby Cashman who served UCF very well for a long time, and I thought did everything that they could possibly do given the resources that they had. With both programs, but it was time for a total facelift of the program, and
no question.
And with John coming in, that's exciting. And boy, I wish I could have seen those. We could have seen success for everybody there, but like I said, this is going to be a tough. That's part of the tough aspect of the business, but I now think that this is the time for UCF tennis to really come into its own. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to talking with both the coaches now too.
I agree. And, we talk about facilities when it comes to football and basketball. Tennis is the same way. I've been to Tulsa, which just hosted the NCAA championships recently. I think it was last season, as a matter of fact. I was there. I've seen their tennis courts. I've stood in there. It's beautiful. It's tremendous. It's like it looks like the U.S. Open. That's what you're dealing with Tulsa, who's one of your teams that you're dealing with in the conference. So, huge commitment for UCF to play at that USTA Center. I think it's a game changer for the community because I think you're going to have a lot of events in that tournament, in that event, not just the conference championships, which you alluded to in April. I think you're going to have NCAA championships there. I was at the Pro Shares event. It's a senior league kind of tennis legends tour thing at the Amway Center recently, about a week ago in town. And the USTA Center's presence was there. And talking to people there, John McEnroe was playing, Andy Roddick was playing, Jim Courier was playing. And talking to tennis people over there, I know that they're hopeful that they can bring in maybe at some point an ATP tour event or a WTA tour event to Lake Nona. So, I mean, this not just as a UCF thing. This is a city of Central Florida thing, Jeff. Yeah. It's big. It's big.
Yeah, I'm hoping that if you're a tennis fan in Central Florida, you get behind this because it's going to be good. So.
Yeah, you and I are going to head out there, right? We're heading out there at some point to check it out. We've been invited. I won't mention the names, but we have been invited, Jeff. So I feel like we have to kind of take them up on that.
That's my hope. I want to get out there, catch a couple matches. We'll see how the schedule works out. And when we do, we'll take some good pictures and we'll send it around to everyone. So that should be a lot of fun. We'll make sure we report back to that. So all right, moving on. Let's take a look at what else is going on in terms of. Well, you know what? This is a good time to actually finish up by talking a little college football to sort of wrap up the season. Yeah. We saw an epic national championship game between Alabama and Clemson. And I told you, Eric Lopez, watch out for those Clemson Tigers who had a chip on their shoulder. Never underestimate the nobody respects us factor. And they defeat Alabama. They scored 21 points in the final quarter, including a final touchdown pass with 1 second to go from Deshaun Watson, Gainesville High School graduate, a red elephant from the mountains of northeastern Georgia, in what's going to be his final touchdown or his final pass as a college athlete.
Wow.
Throwing to Renfro for the game winner with 1 second to go to knock off Alabama. This Alabama team, you look at the advanced metrics, one of the top 5, I think 538.com had them as one of the 5 greatest teams in college football history in terms of their overall ratings. I have to double-check that, but this was certainly one of the 5 biggest upsets in terms of the difference in all those metrics, in terms of the differences in all those metrics. So Clemson wins the national championship, and their second national championship in school history, and it didn't look like that early because watching that offensive line for Alabama was carving up Clemson in the first quarter, and I was thinking, wow, Brent Key is going to be on the tips of people's tongues again with the job that his offensive line was doing against Clemson's defensive front. Now, Alabama did run the ball pretty well. Going forward in that game, I thought that their stars really did shine, particularly on defense and the front seven. But got to hand it to Clemson, and shout out to Joe Simon, former facilities guy over at UCF, who moved on to Clemson and got to see his Tigers win a national championship. And what were your thoughts coming off of that?
Great game. I had Clemson like you did. It didn't look good for about a half. It was weird. Alabama kind of controlled the tempo. But, you've talked about it with Scott Frost and trying to go fast, UC fast, right? Yep. I think you saw some of the reason why in this game, because really, you look at the score and you look at the stats, and Clemson had over 500 yards against that Alabama defense and all that. The Clemson big stat to me.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
99 plays.
Yup. That's exactly what I was going to say.
99 plays, and I don't care how good your defense is. That's a lot of plays to overcome.
The most plays that anyone has ever run in one game against Alabama in history.
Correct. That's the key, because Alabama's defense was controlling Clemson, but because Alabama couldn't get first downs, they were terrible on third downs, and Clemson kept getting first downs and kept getting plays, and that was their goal. And you heard the ESPN, Reese Davis, and the guys talk about it. One of Clemson's goal is to get to 80 plays, because they felt they could wear down Alabama's defense. And I think that's what you saw in the fourth quarter of that game. And that's how Clemson was able to come back and win the game. Congrats to Tucker Israel, by the way, the nephew of Kyle. So he'll have a national championship ring. And he'll be competing for the starting quarterback job now with Deshaun moving on. But that's the key, right? If you want to say what's the ideal scenario from a Scott Frost type offense, you're hoping from a UCF perspective, that's kind of the goal, right? Is to have those plays, 70, 80 plays, wear down the other defense. The problem this past season, Jeff, because the offense was not running on all cylinders, because they don't have all the talent material that to fit the offense. It was the opposite. We saw the opposite, where our defense was on the field too much, and that's the cat and mouse game when you're playing the up tempo, UC fast type of style with the spreads and all this offense. That's what's going on in the sport. You saw it right there. Alabama's defense is the best in the country, but I don't care how good you are. 99 plays takes its toll, and Clemson was able to take advantage of that. And I thought that was the key. They wore them down. And expose their, quote, lack of depth. I say quote because it's laughable when we talk Alabama and lack of depth. I mean, their backups are probably 4 or 5 stars, but they don't have a lot of experience. And, that was huge. So big win for Clemson, big win for the ACC, big win for Dabo Swinney, who was the wide receiver. Obviously, everybody talked about him being the Alabama, played at Alabama, won a national title for Gene Stallings. He was also
1992 against Miami. I remember that game.
He was a grad assistant and all this stuff, but something that people may not be aware. Remember, he was the wide receivers coach under Mike DeBose from 98 to 2000. And I said 2000. Yes, he was the wide receiver coach for Alabama. He was on the field that day in 2000 when UCF beat Alabama on homecoming, which turned out, I think, was Mike DeBose's last game. So Dabo Swinney, well, that's your little kind of connection there, if you will. Dabo Swinney and UCF. playing in that 2000 game, which is obviously the only time UCF ever played Alabama, beat Alabama. I don't know where do you rank that win now, Jeff? That win, because that was huge at the time. It was the biggest win over a Power 5 conference, quote unquote, program at the time. Since then, they've beaten Baylor. Obviously, the Fiesta Bowl, I think everybody would agree that's number 1 on the list. Where is Alabama on that list now? Is it 3? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? Where would you rank that win?
It's either.
Program?
I think it's either 2 or 3, and I think it depends on where you put our first conference championship when we beat Tulsa in Bright House Network Stadium, and where you put our first bowl win. I think against Georgia in the Liberty Bowl. I think that's kind of the whatever order you put it in. I think it's got to be in that top 3 or 4. That upset over Alabama that really did put the Knights, I think, on the map, and where people first ever heard about UCF. I think that's where I would put it personally.
So you were, again, just to clarify, you would rank it?
I personally would rank it second behind the Fiesta Bowl.
So you have it ahead.
I have it ahead. I have it ahead of the Liberty Bowl against Georgia, and I have it ahead of our first conference title against Tulsa.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, no. I'm thinking about it.
This is a tough one, man.
It's hard. I mean, obviously the Baylor one is number 1, but I mean, because it's Alabama, right? I mean, I know Alabama wasn't very good. They had a disappointing year. They were coming off the Orange Bowl. They were a flop.
Still Alabama.
But to win at Bryant-Denny Stadium,
and in the fashion that we did too, last second field goal.
Oh, it was a great football game. I still have that on tape. Brian Schneider was fantastic. Javier Borlegui with the game-winning field goal. I've joked with Jerry O'Neill. Obviously, I produced Tuck and O'Neill. I've joked. No one has a higher win percentage in Bryant-Denny Stadium, right, than Jerry O'Neill on the sidelines, 1-0. Right? That's he's always got that going for him.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, that kind of set the tone. I mean, that's still a magic. Even to this day, that win still registers. So I agree with you. I agree with you. I think it's a more meaningful win than the Georgia game in the Liberty Bowl. Although I know some fans will argue, and they're going to yell at you, and feel free to do that on Jeff's Twitter account, please. Don't add me to that. Because Georgia was the UCF's first ever bowl win. So I understand. I think if you're going to make the argument for number 2, that could be the argument you're going to get. But first of all, that was not a great game. Let's be honest. That was a 10-6 game.
It wasn't, but it really meant something to the school to win that game the way we did against an SEC opponent and get that first bowl win, that first ever bowl win, and finish a season with a W in a bowl game. That matters. That really does matter.
So I'd still put the Alabama game ahead of it, but it's close. The other game I will bring up is the Louisville game, 2013, the regular season game, Bridgewater versus Bortles.
I'm glad
Friday
you brought
night.
that one up. I'm glad you brought that one up. That I think that would be –
because I could argue that's number 2. I might put that number 2 because – I'll tell you why. Here's why. Here's my argument on this. It was a showcase game of Friday night. It was the top 2 teams in the American Conference. Louisville's up 28-7. It looks like all things are lost. And UCF makes that comeback. They win the game. That's the difference in winning the American Conference. If you don't win that game against Louisville, you never get a chance at playing Baylor. You never get a chance at playing the Fiesta Bowl. So I'm actually going to go with the Louisville game, number 2, because that's a significant win. Without that win, you don't get the Fiesta Bowl. So I will actually put that one 2 ahead of the Alabama game because of the significance, the ramifications of that football game in a game that I don't think any Knight fan will forget, because I think people thought that game was over at one point, and it was one of the most incredible comebacks in the program's history. So I would probably go with that one 2. I go Bama's win 3, and then Georgia 4, the Liberty Bowl probably. And
where would you put that Temple game?
That's a great counter argument because you can make the case, right? I mean,
J.J. Watt doesn't make that catch. All that other stuff doesn't happen either.
Sure, right? No, that's fair. I mean, obviously the South Florida game that year, that Black Friday that you liked so much, the Bortles to Perriman. I'll never forget. I was on that sidelines, on that side of the end zone.
I was in the building too, and we were sitting in a section with a bunch of diehard UCF fans who are friends of mine, and we were all looking at each other late in that game, and I think there was an interception at one point for USF, and we were looking at, and they had the ball deep in our territory, and we're looking at ourselves thinking, this is it. This is how it comes to an end. The run's over, and it's going to happen to our rival on our home field. And there was true despair in the stands at that. And then all of a sudden, they missed the field goal. We get the ball back, and then we hit the long touchdown pass, and there's life again, right? I mean, it really went from sheer despair to joy in a span of about maybe a minute and a half.
Yeah, I mean, 2013 in a lot of ways was like that, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint one or two games. I mean, heck, I think the Penn State win. People forget we won at UCF beat Penn State at Penn State that year, and I think that game gets now lost in the shuffle because of all the other games that year. So
yeah,
Temple's certainly a top 10 game. And what's funny is we kind of saw the future of the conference as because that was PJ Walker's coming out party. He was a freshman at the time. Matt Rule was trying to build the Temple program at the time. They were a bottom team, and it's funny. 4 years later, Temple returned the favor, though, right? Isn't that funny how things go full circle? Yeah. You could argue that UCF stole that game away from Temple, and then 4 seasons later at UCF, Walker returns the favor and steals the game from UCF. So, I've always believed sports things tend to even out a little bit, and I guess it did that time. But, those are some of the games that I would probably jump out. NC State, I'm sure people are screaming at us to bring that up as well. The 07 win and the opening day of 07, Kevin Smith's first carry going to the end zone. Is up there. You mentioned the conference championship win over Tulsa in 07. That was a memorable one because of the significance. And obviously, East Carolina, 2014, right? Hale Perriman is another memorable game. Just so many.
These are all games that are in our Division 1A era.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Unless we forget the great games we had again, when we were in Division 1 AA and Division 2.
Right.
I think that game where we beat Youngstown State on the late field goal in the playoffs at Youngstown comes to mind. It's tough. One day, we're going to have to do this over the summer and do like our top 10.
Well, not only that, who we need to bring in? Sean Beckton. He's probably the guy that can answer. He's the most qualified to answer this because he played in that era and he's coached during most of this era. I don't think there's any person that I respect as much as I do with Sean Beckton. With a Hall of Fame player, I would argue he's been a Hall of Fame type position coach, whether it be defensive backs or wide receivers. I'll be curious what he would do. He could probably give you some games there, I'm sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. All right.
By the way, we cannot be remiss since I brought up Kevin Smith. That's one of the big stories this week, Jeff.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith leaving UCF to become the running backs coach at FAU under Lane Kiffin. Kevin announced it on Facebook, on his Facebook page. Very happy for him, Jeffrey. Kevin Smith, I think, obviously we'll always remember, is probably, arguably, top 3 player of all time in the program history, at least in the conversation with him and Culpepper and Bortles and Bruce Miller, if you want to. Probably the 4 names that will be brought up frequently. But your reaction, obviously, Kevin Smith to FAU, I know there's some fans that kind of stings a little bit because he's going to be under, Lane Kiffin's staff. But for him, it's a promotion to be the running backs coach. And it was great to see. I saw Ryan Held, the running back coach, congratulate him on social media. I'm sure all the staff did. And he's moving up in the world now as a coach. Who would have thought of that, when we were watching him play?
I'm thrilled for Kevin Smith that he has got that opportunity at FAU, and I think he's going to be a tremendous asset for Lane Kiffin in terms of recruiting in South Florida. Kevin's a Miami kid. So. I'm happy that he's got the job, and he's going to be working under somebody who, let's face it, he's got Lane Kiffin, is a big time name with some serious connections. I'm sad that now we have to go against Kevin in the recruiting game because, I know Kevin's a knight through and through. You never know. Maybe one day he'll even be coming back one day, if there's there's some staff moves, down the line. But boy, oh boy, he knows the tricks of the trade, and at least in terms of what South Florida kids are looking for. And Lane Kiffin's gain is certainly our loss, and I'm certainly I'm sad about that, but I'm super, super happy for Kevin because he deserves it. He deserves it, certainly.
I do too. Future UCF Hall of Famer. I think the both of us would agree on that.
No question. First year of
he's-
eligibility, if he doesn't get in, something's wrong.
I believe he's eligible, and my math is, it depends. A lot of this UCF Hall of Fames are usually every other year. Sometimes it changes, sometimes it's not. But let's say
It's
my
10
point is
years
a lot
after you graduate. I know
correct.
that.
And
Right.
Now, what's tricky though, remember about Kevin, he left after his junior season to go to the NFL. He played for the Detroit Lions. He did eventually get his degree. Because remember, I'll never forget George O'Leary always kept bringing that up when Kevin Smith came back, and he's like, Kevin, you got to get your degree, So I don't know how that affects the whole thing if that pushes the clock back. Because you mentioned 10 years, so it may not, the question becomes, do they wait? I don't know when he exactly graduated. I think it was maybe a few years ago he got his actual degree. So I don't know if that delays the clock, if you will, or do they put him in? Is he eligible like in 2019? Nonetheless,
We're going to need a ruling from someone. Whoever.
Yeah, I got to hit up my sources on that. Who knows? It's kind of tricky how they trade the rules in there, but we'll see. We'll see what happens
shocked
with
if
that.
they make Kevin wait that long.
I mean, you never know. You never know. Who knows? It just varies, and who knows? If he's busy coaching, it might push it, and who knows? But he'll certainly be there at some point. It'll be interesting and kind of ironic. He's going to be in Conference USA, where he made a name for himself. He was a Player of the Year in Conference USA, and now he's going to be coaching in Conference USA. So,
best of luck to Kevin.
Yeah, and remember, UCF and FAU are scheduled to play in a couple of years. So, exactly.
He may still be there, or he may go wherever Lane Kiffin takes him. Who knows? So,
hopefully, we don't see much more movement on the coaching staff, and who knows? But that's going to be the question, I think, Jeff, to follow in the next few weeks. Is this staff? Does anybody else leave? Does anybody on the staff leave for another job? I think will be the question moving forward, because there's still some position jobs, stuff like that available over there, and we'll see what happens with that. But that's the only other thing to monitor, I think, in the next few weeks from a UCF perspective.
Yeah, we are in the position where we are seeing those the assistant coaching staffs fill out. The head coaching jobs have basically been filled. Now those guys are filling assistant positions, and those are the ones that are really critical in building the staff. All right, so as we finish up here on the blackandgoldbanneret.com podcast, Eric, what do you got coming up this week?
We got a lot. I first want to tell the audience again, first of all, let's first start with you, actually, for a change, because UCF Houston basketball,
right? You
were on recently. Again, tell the audience where they can get more details on UCF Houston.
Make sure you listen to the Scott and Holman podcast. That's Scott and Holman, like Justin Holman, podcast, PAWDCAST, hosted by Sam, Scott, and Dustin Holman. And it's a Houston podcast. They asked me to come on and talk a little UCF in leading up to our game on Saturday, and I was also on the Nightline Live podcast video show, the Spectacular to End the Football Season with Trace and Andrew and Eric Kohler. You can catch that on UCFNightline.com, and also I'd link to it in an article on blackandgoldbanneret.com. So.
Beautiful. So, and then also from my standpoint, check out Tuck and O'Neill weekdays 3 to 7 on Sports Talk 1080 The Team Orlando. You can listen and watch the show on sportstalkflorida.com. But this Friday, the day before the UCF Houston game, Friday, January 13th, I will be filling in for Jerry O'Neill. It'll be me and Mike Tuck hosting the show, and we're scheduled to have Johnny Dawkins will be on the show. So we'll talk about the Houston game. We'll talk about the team. So if you want to hear from Coach Dawkins, tune in. At the time that we're recording this, we don't have a specific time yet, but we will. I'll post that on Twitter at Eric Lopez Elo, so keep an eye on that. And we'll have that interview up on the site here at Black and Gold Banneret. But if you want to hear Coach Dawkins' thoughts leading into the Houston game, tune in to Tuck and O'Neill on Friday for that. Also, I will be hosting the Sports Talk Florida Insider Show on Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'll be at Universal Nissan at the corner of 417 and Orange Blossom Trail, and that's a big show because we're also scheduled to be joined by UCF softball head coach Renee Loris-Gillespie. Softball's just around the corner. We'll preview the softball season coming up. So we're going to hear from Coach Gillespie, a very young team. So we'll talk about that. I'm also going to ask her about some of her former players going into coaching. Shelby Turnier now is at UNF. So I'll get her reaction to that. And so, that'll be from 11 to 1, the show. Also, Texas Tech tennis coach Brett Macy. You heard a portion of that interview I recorded with him on this podcast. You'll hear the entire interview on Saturday at around 11:30. Coach Gillespie, I think, is scheduled to be on around 12:30. But you'll get Coach Macy to talk about the match, what John Roddick will bring to UCF and the USTA Center on the day that UCF will host Texas Tech in a landmark match to open the USTA Center, UCF's first men's tennis match there. So you're going to keep it on the Insider Show from 11 to 1. We'll talk about UCF softball season coming up, and, of course, UCF tennis going up against Texas Tech. You'll get to hear what the opponents and what the peers think of John Roddick from one of the best in the country and Brett Macy. So that's a big show Saturday, 11 to 1. And then I'll be heading out to watch the UCF Houston game. So if you run into me, say hello, tell you enjoy the podcast. And I hope to see you all out there as well. And that's a full plate I got, my friend, in the weekend.
I know it's a busy week coming up, especially now we're heading towards in a little bit. We're going to have another sports equinox here for UCF with basketball crossing over with baseball and softball and tennis and golf and a number of other sports coming up. So, and Eric, everyone can follow you on Twitter at
Eric Lopez Elo. So you get all the details there. And like I said, go there. I'll tweet out the Johnny Dawkins interview. The Insider Show stuff, 1080, 11 to 1. You can also I'll listen to the audio on sportstalkflorida.com, Tuck and O'Neill, 3-7. So a lot of UCF. Because I know you were out there. You're always, what are these radio shows? They don't talk about UCF. Well, you got no excuses.
Yeah,
you got right there. Yeah, that's right.
You also have podcasts that you can listen to as well. So
that's right. Like ours, we got a lot more coming up.
That's right. You can hit me up at Jeff_Sharon. Hit us up collectively at UCF_Banneret, blackandgoldbanneret.com, and as well on Facebook, and subscribe to this podcast if you don't already on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and TuneIn. So for Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.